Started. Welcome everyone to the Friday afternoon series. Debbie McRae is joining again today. I've got I always say I've got my pen and paper ready because I take more notes for Debbie's. She's got such great content that is really useful and practical for this challenging journey through betrayal trauma, addiction recovery. How do we come back together? All of those things. So, Debbie, what do you have for us today?
Well, today we are going to talk about why intimate betrayal is so devastating.
Mm,
And I'm going to give you some tools on how we can work on healing from the impact of it. So, today, like I mentioned, we're going to talk about intimate betrayal. So, how does this topic help the betraying partner? I think it helps the betraying partner understand exactly what the betrayed partner is going through, and hopefully to help you understand why you see your partner experiencing what they are. For you, the betrayed partner, I'm hoping today that I'm going to give you some helpful tools that will help you regulate and to help you begin your healing on the different areas in your life, your body, your experience that has been so impacted by betrayal. So we are going to discuss some hands-on tools that will assist you with this devastating impact of betrayal. So what do I see showing up in my office? I always like to be really aware of what I see presenting. And just recently, I'm seeing a lot of betrayed partners coming in and sharing about how they feel so stuck in their recovery. Oftentimes they're asking things like, how long is it going to take for this to heal? Or will I ever feel like myself again? Why am I always so overwhelmed? I can't move out of this state. I've even had recently group members share about how they are so stuck in some really intense emotions. And these are emotions they've never experienced to this level in their life before, like anger or grief. Others question, why am I going to, they're questioning, am I always going to feel this way? Is there any hope for getting better? They want to know that they can somehow be able to move on. So, what makes intimate betrayal so devastating and traumatic for the betrayed partner? Well, there are 5 core reasons. The first one is there's an attachment rupture. So, the minute there's disclosure or discovery, the betrayed partner is now in this state of crisis. They see their betraying partner as no longer the safe base that they once were. And now they are a source of danger. So in an instant, there is that shattering of trust, there's loss, and there's a deep attachment injury. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason it's so devastating is because there's instant trauma in the body that takes place. So with discovery and disclosure, this triggers a survival response in the brain. So the brain is no longer functioning attached to prefrontal cortex, but instead it's in that mid-back part of the brain in that limbic region where we have fight, flight, or freeze. So the nervous system is on high alert. It treats the betrayal as a threat, not just to their survival, the betrayed partner's survival, but also to the survival of the relationship. The third thing that creates such devastation and betrayal trauma is the fact that the betrayed partner's sense of identity and the sense of their world around them collapses. So all of a sudden, they are asking themselves, how could I miss this? What's wrong with me that I would not be able to see this? Is my world even real? And there's a lot of shame and self-doubt that comes up for the betrayed partner. The fourth area that's really impacted is that there's boundary and sexual injury. So the deception of betrayal breaks all boundaries that the partner thought was in place. And they ending up in a state of fear. They're fearful about their sexual safety. They're fearful about their future. They're fearful about what was even real in my life. And so they don't even know where to turn or what to do. And so there is a lot of anxiety, not only about their health, but about many aspects about how they view themselves, their own boundaries, and especially around sexual boundaries that they thought were part of this monogamous relationship. The fifth area is that there are so many different losses, and oftentimes these losses come from things like the secrecy, the lies, the gaslighting. So with gaslighting, there's that loss of intuition or really knowing the truth. Sometimes we have family and friends that aren't real supportive. They don't understand betrayal trauma. So there's sometimes that loss of support. There's loss of life as we knew it. So it changes up routines. We can't always depend on staying emotionally regulated. So oftentimes, partners, as a result of so many losses, it feels so overwhelming that oftentimes they end up moving into behaviors of isolation. It's like betrayed partners say to me, I am just so overwhelmed. And when I get to that state, I just want to go to my room and just curl up and not do anything. They are so overwhelmed. So, what I'd like to do today is I'd like to talk about 5 specific areas where the betrayed partner really feels the devastating impact of betrayal. And then I'm going to talk as we're going along. I'm also going to give you tools in each of these areas of things that you can do to help yourself if you're dealing with any of the impacts in these areas. So the first area of impact is that impact that I briefly mentioned earlier on that sense of self. So like I mentioned, the betrayed partner's world as they knew it is shattered. I often use the analogy of when I had my own betrayal, it was like my world was just shattered and broken to a million pieces. And I had to go and pick up each piece and figure out what I was going to do with it, how I was going to heal it, and how I was going to put my world back together. So in this area, we're going to talk about how the betrayed partner really views themselves and their reality. So oftentimes I hear betrayed partners asking, gosh, I don't know what was real in the relationship, right? I think about a vacation we went on, and to me, it doesn't feel like it was really true, or it was really the reality that I thought it was. Betrayed partners often feel like they will always be in trauma and they will never get better, especially in the early days, weeks, and months. When they are in survival mode, they are in a constant state where there's hypervigilance. They might have ruminating thoughts. Their fight, flight, and freeze. Limbic responses take over. And the betrayed partner has a sense of feeling like they are missing who they are because they can't control their emotions. They can't control their moods. They can't control their mind states. And so they're often dealing with a lot of intrusive thoughts and, of course, triggers. And then comes the intense emotions that they can't control. So as a result of this, betrayed partners oftentimes have their own sense of shame that they're dealing with. And the shame can be things like around the fact that they can't stay emotionally regulated. It could be, if my partner chose me, right? And I am now in this relationship with them and they are betraying me and I don't want to leave. What does that say about me? And oftentimes betrayed partners question if they're a bad person for staying. So when we kind of get caught in this cycle, there really is a sense of powerlessness and in feeling stuck for the betrayed partner. I'm stuck in my emotional dysregulation. I'm stuck in my ruminating thoughts. I'm stuck in getting triggered so easily. So let's talk about some tools that the betrayed partner can use if this comes up. Well, the first thing that we want to do is we want to separate the experience that the betrayed partner is having from their own personal identity. So what they are experiencing is betrayal trauma. It is not who they are. So they are in a state of trauma. So lots of times what we can do when we're triggered is recognizing, or if we're going into maybe some negative self-talk about how we can't handle triggers, or we are having ruminating thoughts, is we can recognize that I'm experiencing ruminating thoughts because of my betrayal. It is not who I am. I oftentimes suggest to betrayed partners that they make a list of what they do know about themselves because they lose a sense of who they really are. And so I have them make a list of positive character traits that they have because we don't want the betrayed partner to identify solely as being a betrayed partner. We want them to hold on to some of their own identity. The next thing you can do, and another tool, is what I call maybe doing the one-step exercise at reclaiming yourself. So when you're feeling so overwhelmed, when you're stuck in this cycle as a betrayed partner, just tell yourself you're going to do one thing. So today I'm going to set and uphold one boundary, or today I'm going to do one self-care activity, or today I'm going to connect with one person, or with my group. I'm just going to take that one step towards connection. This is another way where you can still hold on to yourself and not get swallowed up in all of your betrayal responses. The third thing you can do is, like I said, you can really ground yourself in the truth to know that who you are and to help you stay emotionally regulated. So you write a I know list. I know that I deserve for healing. I know that I deserve to have boundaries that create safety. I know that I am a good person. I know that my partner's acting out has nothing to do with me, because oftentimes we get so caught up in all the negative self-talk because the brain has that negative bias that we often forget the truth of our situation. So it's really important. And again, journaling is such a great activity for doing this. The other thing that I really like in order to really gain a sense of self and to stay out of any shame or negative self-talk is to really focus on self-compassion. I do find that betrayed partners really struggle with this. So I love to direct them to use Kristen Neff's self-compassion formula. And in that, what we do is we recognize three different things. The first thing we recognize is that this is a moment of pain or this is a moment of shame. And so as a betrayed partner, they might say, right now, I'm experiencing a lot of pain around my betrayal. I don't even know if I should stay or leave the relationship. So that's step one. Step two is to recognize that you're not the only one who's ever experienced this. So as the betrayed partner, you might say, many betrayed partners struggle with whether to stay or leave. There is no simple answer to what I'm experiencing. And then the third step is to speak kindly to yourself. And so for the betrayed partner, they might say, may I speak gently to myself, may remind myself that I'm doing the best I know how to do, and that it's okay to take it one day at a time. So I love the idea of when we're in that negative self-talk, when we're criticizing ourselves, when we are, having a lot of shame about maybe how we are reacting to our trauma, that we can use self-compassion as a way to get out of that. I also recommend that betrayed partners maybe have their own mantra that they use and then they memorize. So the mantra could be something really simple like, this experience I'm in is really hard, and other betrayed partners feel this way too. May I be kind to myself and choose what supports my safety and my healing today. So something real simple, memorize it and use it, especially when you are moving into shifting into some negative self-talk, into your shame, and you're losing a sense of who you really are. The other area that's really impacted is the impact on the betrayed partner's body. So how that impact shows up, first of all, is there's such stress and overwhelm on the nervous system. So during the early stages of crisis, and then even later on when you're triggered, a betrayed partner might end up in a fight, flight, or freeze response. So when this happens, they're going to have all sorts of even body sensations happen, and we're going to have different body states that occur. So there's going to be trouble sleeping. There could be racing thoughts, high levels of anxiety, feelings of depression, feeling like you're on edge all the time, that hypervigilance, even feeling like you're shutting down or numbing out. So the nervous system is constantly on high alert. That's one of the impacts. Another impact is on the physical body itself. So I have betrayed partners talk about how they have digestive issues, or they might have appetites that swing. They're not eating at all, or they're wanting to eat all the time. There are those that talk about they've got now pain they've never had before, that their bodies ache. Even those are diagnosed, some of them are diagnosed with autoimmune diseases. So the physical body is really impacted because you're in a state of stress. I have betrayed partners talk about losing hair as a result of the betrayal. So we've got to support the physical body. And included in the physical body, and the third area that really is impacted on a body level, are hormones and even your immune system. They take a hit. So some betrayed partners, if they are female, might have irregular cycles. There might be changes in your sex drive. You might find that you have more illnesses. I know when I went through my betrayal, I was really, really sick at times, and I had not been sick in those ways previously. There might even be slower healing. So it's so important that we start to focus on what's going on in the body. So some of the tools we can use for supporting that the impact of betrayal on the body is, first of all, we've got to learn how to use breathing. I think breathing brings us back into our body. It helps us regulate our nervous system. So I'm going to give you a couple of breathing ideas today. And the first one is kind of a new one I've come across, and it works really well for me. It is, we're going to breathe in for 4, and we're going to breathe out for 6. And when you do that, you're going to count in your head as you're breathing. So you would breathe in 2, 3, 4, and out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you want to do that for about 90 seconds and really get the breathing down and get comfortable, get back in your body. I also talk about the 4, 7, 8 breathing. So with this breathing, we're going to breathe in through the nose to the count of 4. You're going to breathe out slowly through your mouth for the count of 7. And then you're going to hold it for the count of 8. So again, what's going to help us regulate and get our nervous system to calm down is not only the breathing, but if you're doing the counting as well, that helps us connect to prefrontal cortex. Another technique that I really like is I like what I call the butterfly hug, which could be this over your chest, or I call it the crossbody tapping or crossbody hug. And so with this, when we are dysregulated and we're trying to calm ourselves down, this is very, very soothing. And I like to combine it with some type of positive affirmation, like I'm safe in this moment, right? I am peaceful. I'm calming. I can handle anything. Whatever works for you, come up with your statements that help you regulate, those positive affirmations that will bring you back into your body. The other thing that's really helpful is it is really imperative that you have rituals and routines. And these rituals and routines have got to support your body. So we talk about doing dailies. So dailies are those things that you do, those healing and recovery exercises or self-care items that you do to support yourself in 4 different areas. The first one being physical. So with your physical body, what are you doing? How much sleep are you getting? What time are you going to bed? How much water are you drinking? Are you eating regularly? Are you exercising? So it's anything that supports your physical body. And you can start out simple. Oftentimes with rituals and routines, I talk about doing something in the morning. First thing, come up with 1 or 2 items that help you getting grounded in the morning and get your day started. The other one is an evening routine. What can you do at night at the end of the day to help calm yourself down and get ready to go to sleep? So back to the dailies, not only do we want to do something physical, but we want to focus on something that will feed your spirit. So that could be everything from journaling to going out and being in nature, to listening to music, to doing any kind of spiritual practices. Also emotionally, what are you doing each day? We need to tune into ourselves and ask ourselves, what do I need to take care of me right now? Do I need to take a nap? Do I need to reach out to a friend? Do I need to stop and just listen to a podcast? What do I need in this moment? And then relationally, it's so important in our healing that every day we are connecting with other people. If we can't connect and it's not safe to connect with the betraying partner, then we need to connect with our support system, whoever's there for us, whether it's a group, a trusted family friend, or a family member or friend. What we need to maintain that connection and not withdraw. And then, of course, if you're having a lot of issues with your physical body, it's really, really important that you get in and you seek medical help. Get a doctor that understands trauma and have them do testing. I do have clients go in and they test hormones. So we test for cortisol, which is a stress hormone. There's a lot of different things that can be done to help support your physical body while you're going through betrayal trauma. The third area that's really impacted is the betrayed partner's impacted mentally, and this includes their thoughts and their thinking. So how this impacts a betrayed partner is, of course, they've got those intrusive thoughts that they can't stop. They just keep coming. They're flooded with them. And sometimes those thoughts cause the betrayed partner to catastrophize. Sometimes their intrusive thoughts cause them to replay scenes over and over again, or maybe they get stuck in questions and there's a lot of rumination. So what I see this leading to is lots of times the betrayed partners trying to put all the details together. I call it putting the puzzle pieces together. They're trying to take all the information they can possibly find and try to make sense of everything, from everything in the past to even what's currently happening in the here and now. And sometimes they even project into the future. So they're questioning, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here? How's this going to end? What if this doesn't work out? So they're really ruminating about the future, which they have no control over. And then, of course, they oftentimes move into safety seeking. I'm trying to figure out how to make sure that my partner's safe right now, or what I can do to make sure that I know everything as I'm putting the puzzle piece together. So I often tell betrayed partners that it's really your thoughts and some of the thinking that you go into that's distorted that's really going to cause you to become dysregulated. And so there's some tools you can use to help contain it. So the first thing is to think about giving yourself a set amount of time to either worry about something or ruminate about something. So my recommendation is you get 30 minutes every day. You're going to put a container around it. So you can go back to your journal and you can review any questions or things you've written down. I also like doing a journal dump. So when you're doing a journal dump, you're going to open up your journal and you're going to write down everything you're thinking, everything you're ruminating about. Just get it on paper, get it out of your head. And then when you start to go back into the ruminating thoughts, once that 30 minutes is over, then you're going to choose to redirect to a regulating behavior. You're going to go for a walk. You're going to go out and swim. You're going to go work on puzzles. That was suggested by one of my betrayed partners. They found that stopped their ruminating thoughts if they worked on a really complex puzzle. Go do artwork, do your guided breathing, but just tell yourself you're not going to go back into worrying that you're going to do it the next day because you've got 30 minutes tomorrow. Okay. The next one is thought stopping and reframing. This is really important. I talk about this as being part of a daily ritual or routine that you implement if you are struggling with ruminating thoughts. One of them is to recognize when you're in your ruminating thoughts. So oftentimes it's when we feel a physical body sensation that's distressing. So it's going to be things like anger or fear, or it's going to be anxiety. And then stop in that moment and identify what you were telling yourself. What was the story you were in? And then simply, if you're by yourself, you're going to say, stop it. I'm not going to go there. It's not completely true, because what we know about the brain is the brain takes bits and pieces of truth or information. What it doesn't know, it fills in the gaps, and we create a narrative or a story. And our stories are distorted to some degree, meaning they're not completely true. So what we're going to do is tell ourselves to stop it, and then we're going to move into reframing the thought to something positive and something calming. I tell those that I work with that if you have ruminating thoughts that don't work with just stop it, then tap the side of your head 7 times and say stop it, 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 7 times out loud, and then reframe it. So I'm going to give you some examples of what that would look like. So let's say you've got a lot of shame about staying in the relationship. You're going to identify that you're telling yourself a story about how weak you are because you're thinking that you should be going, but you're staying. And when you find that, you're going to go, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it. I'm not going to go there. It's not completely true. What is true is I'm making thoughtful, time-limited choices while I am gathering data, while I'm getting my support and figuring out what my next step is. So I'm reframing it to something that's much more empowering. Maybe I'm catastrophizing the future. So once I recognize, and I might be telling myself, I'm never going to feel safe again. Again, I tell myself to stop it. I'm not going to go there. That's not completely true. And what is true is I am working on building safety today with my own boundaries, by turning to my own support, and by doing self-care. And that's all I need to do today. So we keep reframing the negative thought to something positive. And again, we talked a little bit about containing things. The other exercise I like to do with my clients is I have them visualize a container, and let's imagine taking all those thoughts and writing them on slips of paper, and imagine just putting them in the container and shutting the container and putting it on a shelf that you're going to then take that container into your next therapy session to address. So find some type of thought regulating exercise that helps you, and then work and do your very best to stay out of those thoughts. The fourth area of impact is on sexual intimacy and a lack of safety. So what we find in this area is that betrayed partners really do have their desire that's affected because they don't feel safe. There's confusion when they do want to have sexual intimacy. Some don't want it at all. Some shut down. Sometimes there's flashbacks. Sometimes there's even triggers and body memories that come up. So it's really important that you have some tools in place for that. I like using the 3-circle plan idea. And with that, the outer circle is green. So what is okay? Is it okay to hold hands? Is it okay to hug? And we determine what that is. Then in the yellow or the middle circle, you're going to have some of those interactions, physical, maybe even sexual interactions that is only okay if you check in. And it might even be it's only okay for me to come in and touch you with permission first. And then if it's not okay, do you have a stop word? Maybe it's pause, or maybe it's putting a hand up and saying stop. And then red, the inner circle, is going to be absolutely not for now. And so it's going to be something that you as a betrayed partner determine what feels safe for you, and you're going to be the one that's going to determine what goes in those circles. It's really important that you have health and safety boundaries in place. So for some of the betrayed partners, it's I need total transparency and radical honesty, and that includes a formal therapeutic disclosure. For some, I need accountability tools. So I need to do a Fanos every night or 3 nights a week. For some of you, I need to have STI testing that's completed and done, and maybe I need it done multiple times. For others, I need to know what your recovery plan is, and I need you to share it with me. So that's really, really important. Also, put into place that if you are going to have sexual intimacy, that you have some type of protocol or a boundary in place that if all of a sudden there is a trigger, what are you going to do? So obviously there's going to be a timeout, and then a plan in place is how to create safety. So what type of comforting things do you need the betraying partner to do? Or what are you going to do as the betrayed partner to regulate and create safety? And then later on, once everything is passed and a little bit of time has passed, maybe the next day, then we can sit down and debrief it later, but not during the actual triggering event itself. We're just working on reestablishing safety. Okay, the last area I'm going to talk about is that area of emotional health and emotional regulation. Because with this, I find that there are certain ways that mentally, emotionally, betrayed partners are impacted, and especially around some 4 different emotions I'm going to talk about. One of them is anger. The other one is the impact it has on grief, also numbness, and then even withdrawing. A lot of partners indicate that these are really intense feelings to have. So I want to talk about anger, first of all. I think with anger, it's okay to understand that it is a part of the natural grief process. And anger is okay to experience, but it's how we let the anger manifest. What are the actions I move into? So it's really important that you identify, if you're a betrayed partner, what you will do when you're angry. So are you going to have an anger journal like I had, where when you get angry, you go off by yourself, and you can be as angry as you want to be, and you're writing on those pages and getting everything on the pages that you're angry about. It's important that you have a plan where you include time out and self-care. You have anger release activities. You're going to do jumping jacks. You're going to go hold ice until you regulate it. You're going to go smash ice on the sidewalk. Are you going to hit the ground with a pool noodle or the trunk of a tree with a pool noodle? Are you going to run or walk around the block? Are you going to do a cold plunge or take a cold shower? Something to pull you out of that state of anger. And then also identifying what you will not do, which is going to be raging. It might be that I'm not going to have hard conversations where I get angry after a certain time at night. I'm not going to threaten to harm the other person or leave the relationship. And then I'm not going to have arguments while we're in a car driving together or when we're around children around public. So it's really important that you put your own internal boundaries in place around anger. And it's really important too that if you're struggling with anger piece, then turn to your therapist and have your therapist help you learn how to regulate. There might be a lot of resourcing or grounding tools they can teach you, a lot of meditative practices, and there might even be some trauma that they can help you address and begin to work on. The next one is numbing and getting back into your body. So, with this, I feel like daily meditation is really important where you're using guided imagery that focuses on your body, right? Tightening muscles, relaxing muscles, focusing on breathing and your awareness around your respirations. I like getting out in the sun, sitting on the ground so you're feeling the ground underneath you. You're feeling the sun on your skin. Of course, the five senses exercise is really great for getting back in your body when you're dysregulated. And as a reminder, those five senses are, I'm going to say out loud 5 things I see, 4 things that I feel with my physical body,
Mhm.
3 things that I hear, 2 things I smell, 1 thing I taste. And then you can also turn to a trusted person to co-regulate. So I can go and I can reach out to somebody, I can talk to somebody, I can tell them I'm feeling numb, and maybe I can talk through it and they can help me come back into my body. If you've got grief, I think working with a therapist is really important on this. I know in my betrayal, I really got stuck in my grief. And it was with the help of my therapist that I was educated on the stages of grief. There's a lot of exercises and activities that you can do where you address each of these stages of grief. I did a webinar, 2-part webinar on the different stages of grief so you understand it. And in that, there's some ideas of what you can do. I also like having betrayed partners doing this in a group setting so you can just discuss your grief and present some of the work you're doing on your grief to other people. And then you might have to have your therapist help you work through the different aspects of grief. Maybe they are trained in certain therapeutic modalities that will help you do this. So it's important that when we have these intense emotions, that if you can't work on it on your own and you can't figure it out, it's really important you turn to somebody else to help you co-regulate. And a therapist is such a great resource in this area. So in conclusion, I just want to recognize that I've covered just a few things today. Recovery from betrayal is so complex. It is so multifaceted. It unfolds. I talk often about how it's in layers. It's not a straight line from point A to point Z and we're healed. Today we discussed some tools and ways to support yourself in 4 important areas. If it feels overwhelming as you hear this webinar, my recommendation is start with something simple. I mentioned the 1 thing plan. Just do 1 thing in the morning and 1 thing at night, and then keep adding to the plan, and then you're going to adjust it as your healing begins to move forward. Learn what supports you. You don't have to do everything I talked about. You might find that 2 or 3 things work for you, and that's all you need to do, and that's enough. So I just want to end by sharing with those that are listening to this that there is real healing in this. You can heal. As you focus on your own recovery, as you use your self-care tools, and I've discussed many of them today, and you have the right support, you're not always going to experience what you're experiencing now as a betrayed partner. So hopefully I've given you some things to help you.
Absolutely, and I think it's so important to have that lifeline of like it won't always feel this way. I was thinking when you talked about numbness, like some people feel numb. I've also experienced a little surge in it lately of partners who are doing things to numb out. Like they're intentionally food or cannabis or drinking or whatever.
Mhm.
So if it's numbness but not, I'm feeling numb. I'm looking to escape into numb. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do see. I'm going to tell you, I find that lots of times betrayed partners use drinking. I see that quite often because, especially when there's high levels of anxiety around betrayal, right? Drinking calms me down. The problem is it also has a rebound effect of depression. So I am now battling so many different complex things. So I think that it's really important that you're open, first of all, as a betrayed partner with your therapist and talk about what you are doing to numb out. For a lot of them, it's even scrolling on social media and I'm numbing out, but as I'm on social media or if I'm using cannabis, right, I am numbing out. I'm not feeling it all and I'm losing track of time. And then a lot of times with betrayed partners, I'm finding then they start really getting critical of themselves and they go into negative self-talk. So my recommendation would be, if you find that you're numbing out, make a list of the behaviors you're doing for numbing out, and then take that into your therapist and have a discussion and then talk about what can I do to replace it with, right? So instead of just stopping it all at once, what we want to do is we want to figure out what's something healthy I can do rather than numbing out that will give me the same emotional regulating effects. So it might be that it's listening to music. And so that music, because I just recognized the other day and remembered that one of the things I needed for emotional regulation constantly during my betrayal was I had to have music playing. And it
Mm.
had to be really uplifting, inspiring music. And I like to sing, so I would sing along, and I felt that was very regulating. So something like that is better for me to do than to get on social media and look at other people's lives and see how wonderful their lives look. And then I go into my thinking about how awful my life is right now because of all my betrayal. So that's what I'm talking about, replacing it with something positive. Even getting an accountability partner. So maybe somebody that you can turn to when you find yourself wanting to go into those numbing behaviors, right? And turning to them and having maybe an agreement put into place that they're supposed to remind you that you're not going to use cannabis because or alcohol because remember it does this, 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 and this, and you told me that you don't want to feel that way. So those are some of my ideas on that.
Yeah, and great point about the accountability partner. I had subbed in on one of the betrayed partner groups not too long ago, and one of the women said there are 10 people on this group that I could call anytime to, to connect with, and that's what the points of those are. So if you don't have a group or an accountability partner, join our free drop-in groups and connect with other people that you can connect with. And we have separate ones for the addict partner and the betrayed partner. And again, lots of people do connect and create their own accountability, peer support, for that. I love too, and we're going to get to the questions, but I love too that you talked about, these are some things I will do, and these are some things I agree not to do, and I think that's really important because, especially in a dysregulated state, we'll do some things that we may later regret, or that aren't as helpful in the moment. So having, the ability when we are in our thinking state to identify these are some things that I will choose to do, and these are some things I will choose not to do. And you won't do it perfectly, but gosh, if you can make some progress on that, that's what this is all about. And but I really, want to speak to the hopelessness, the will I ever feel okay again? Will I ever, all of that shame and everything. And, we wouldn't do this if we didn't know there was hope. And we see lots of people, who come through it. You don't just shove it in the closet. You come through it and, in our very different place. And I've had partners say, I wouldn't have chosen what we had to go through, but I am a stronger person. I am like all of these good qualities about themselves. I loved, when you're talking about the positive self-talk, like I know myself better than I did. I will advocate for myself. I will hold my personal healthy boundaries, all of those things, which they didn't even know about prior to doing this work. So staying the course, things absolutely can change for the better. So I'm starting to learn from my therapist in a book I'm reading that my anxious attachment style is a possible, probable reason why I don't feel connected to God. I have never really felt a relationship, but have been reaching my entire life. I do have complex PTSD. What are some ways I can work on and heal from this?
Well, that's a great question. And yes, I do believe that there is, because if we have an anxious attachment style, it's going to be difficult to connect to not only those that we are in relationship with, whether it's our betraying partner, our children, family members, friends, group members, whatever it is, right? It only makes sense that it would also, go beyond that. And it would also affect our attachment to God or our higher self. And so I think what you work on, and of course, let me go back and also just really acknowledge that complex PTSD will also make it very difficult to move towards someone and connect because your nervous system has wired through all those experiences of PTSD to react a certain way to keep you safe. So remember, the brain has a negative bias, so it's always looking for negative, and it's always going to notice. And if we've got an anxious attachment, especially, what we are looking at is we're looking for all those subtle things that tell us it's not safe. Or we've also, with an anxious attachment, because most likely our past experiences have been that people don't show up for us. And I can't trust others to show up for me. And oftentimes, with an anxious attachment, we have taken on a belief, a distorted belief that we have to do it ourselves, or nobody is really ever there for me. And so when we turn and we want to turn to God for help and support, or for, solace, or even for ideas, because we're already running that pattern that I can't trust others to show up for me, right? Or I don't matter, or,
I'm not worthy.
myself, I'm not worthy, then of course, right, our connection to God is going to be disrupted. Um, I know that when I went through betrayal, I had a very much an anxious, even avoidant attachment style. So it was in and out, in and out, in and out, right? And so for me, I did have that feeling of, right, that higher power or God was not there for me because I went through one of the most devastating things. The person the closest to me ended up not being there for me. So it ended up translating to God. So, what do we do to work on it? Well, I'm hoping that you're working on the PTSD and that you have been. If you can recognize, first of all, how it shows up, I believe awareness is the first step. I've got to be aware of how my anxious attachment is showing up in my relationship with God, with my higher power, even with others, right? What are the stories I go into? What do I tell myself about that, right? And then what are the behaviors I move into, right? And how can I maybe reframe it? So this is kind of how can I shift and change my behaviors? This is a cognitive behavioral therapy approach. So I'm going to change my thinking first, okay? And with that, I'm going to reframe it and I'm going to fake it till I make it and help my brain rewire new neural pathways where I can start to maybe see that, yes, God is showing up for me. So, one of the exercises you can do would be gratitude exercises. And that's what I started doing in my recovery. And in noticing the ways that I felt God showed up for me in little things. It might be something beautiful I saw. It might be that somebody just showed up on a doorstep or something went really easily for me, right? I started expressing gratitude. So a daily gratitude practice would be really, really helpful. Along with reframing your thoughts, right? And not going into the distorted thinking, but the positive, right, affirmations. And then the other thing is going in and working with your therapist and reprocessing any trauma you have around attachment. We all have attachment wounding. And so, what kind of relational attachment trauma do you have? And working on healing those negative beliefs. And I think that's I think that's some of the ways that I healed some of my anxious attachment. And again, I also worked on those feelings of I am worthy, I am enough. And that also helped really strengthen my connection with my higher power, with God.
Yeah, this is a really interesting and great question, and and pondering that too. I was thinking I wanted things to magically get better, and like I thought if I was worthy enough, then my higher power would have magically fixed everything for me. And since he my higher power didn't do that, then I wasn't, like it was that whole story that it's um a negative story I was telling myself that I was not worthy of getting help. And what I did figure out was I was always okay. I'm still alive. I'm, like all of these things, like ultimately, and all of the tools and lessons I have learned have been so valuable to me. Some of them painful along the way, but I've learned from everything. And And I realized, along this journey, and I realized it, I don't even remember, but relatively early compared to where I am now, that I couldn't take one piece of that away to be where I am now. And I'm grateful for where I am now. And 2 years from now, I'll be more grateful, than I am in the, it's like, it's this whole journey. But I needed every little piece. You're talking about the thousand little pieces of things. And I needed all of those pieces and I had to put them back together again, and they do come together. And even if we don't know what the box cover looks like, the way they come together is so beautiful and meaningful. And I'm saying that in truth, like even with life stuff. And Debbie and I, like, we both have life stuff going on, and we can experience it in a real and meaningful way. The fear, I can imagine how fearful and how much fear there is at the root of this. And could you get burned again? Sure. Are you strong enough to handle it? Absolutely. Look, here's where you are now. So I put a couple of things in the chat. Debbie is doing another um, healthy boundaries work group, coming up later this month. And there's room, and I would invite you to participate in that. That will be specifically like you'll get the information and tools you need to help create the boundaries that you need, on this journey, for you. The other thing is on Monday, Dr. Eddie Caparucci, we were talking about wounds, and there's inner child wounds, for everybody. I don't know anybody who doesn't have some, but he's doing a special edition webinar. It does require registration. This will not be recorded. There is a $30 fee for this. It's it's a 90-minute webinar for partners with inner child work. So I put the description in there and the link to join. There is room in that as well. We would love to have you join us, for that. I love that approach to looking at things that the wounds that may not be serving us and how we can bring them forward and address those. So consider those options. I'm so glad you're here and asking the question. What I hear is I don't want to be shackled to this. I want to be able to move forward, and I believe you will.
Mhm.
Okay. I want to get to support to calm from doctors, such trouble sleeping, antidepressant, anything but telling my doctor why is embarrassing. Any suggestions? Oh, I bet you hear this one often.
Yeah, you know what? This is really hard. We don't want to disclose, here's why I'm in such distress. And so, a couple of thoughts I have. First of all, we don't have to share everything. We can keep it very, very general. So, my thoughts as I read your question were, could you write down something very general as you go in to see your doctor so you're prepared? Lots of times I like bullet points, right? That might say that right now there is I don't know if you're married or with your partner, but let's say with my spouse, right? We are having relationship difficulties. And right now, right, my partner's made choices that have impacted me adversely. As a result, I'm not able to sleep, right? I am dealing with high levels of anxiety or depression, and I need support for my physical body so I can sleep. And I was wondering if I could get an antidepressant, if there's any medication that would help me while I am working on my own healing. And that's about all you have to say, unless you choose to say more. And if they come back and say, well, what exactly you're going through, it's okay for you to say, well, right now, I'm just not at the place where I feel like I can talk about it. And it's okay to say that. So maybe you need to practice that, write it down. My other thought was say it out loud to a friend. Talk to somebody about it and talk it through so it feels comfortable. But I think it's okay to go in and say right now, there's kind of a crisis going on, or there is a crisis going on in my relationship with my spouse. I'm under a tremendous amount of stress. I am not sleeping. I have a lot of depression and anxiety, and I'm here to get some support. So, and then talk about the antidepressant, and there are medications that will help with anxiety that are not addicting, that are very, very effective. And I love the fact that you are wanting to get support. So I want to validate how important that is. It will make a huge difference in your recovery. I often find with partners that get really stuck that sometimes we have to support our brains, because a brain that's experiencing trauma doesn't have the same kind of neurochemicals it normally does. It doesn't have the same serotonin. It gets used up or it gets depleted. We're not producing it like we were. And so sometimes we do need to go have a little bit of help, especially in the early days. And then eventually down the road, as you're healing, right, then you can move away from that support.
Yeah, and I'm with Debbie. They don't need to know all the details, just the general. Yeah, I mean, people coming to our residential treatment program, they're like, "What do I say?" Just say, I need to go do some personal work." Like it doesn't have to be. I have to tell everybody everything. And I advocate for you to do that and find some things that the breathing, are there things that you can do to supplement that will help you, not just sleep but like during the day to be calmer and more regulated. I do the 4-7-8 breathing, and it's 2 minutes. It takes me 2 minutes and I can go from a place to that. I have done when when Debbie did the tapping, I have done that. I have done stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, and I can't even tell you what I did it on because I don't remember once I say stop it. Like I honestly, I don't remember. And it's good because I don't want to remember all that stuff. So there are things that you can utilize that will help in the moment. And even if you get a few minutes of reprieve from that, that helps. You start to, put those things together and you go, I am going to be okay. And the more I love, the positive reframings, like this is awful now. Like if I'm focused on this is awful now, I'm grateful I have, a friend, the sun is shining in my window right now, whatever it is, like anything you can do to get just a snippet of relief from that, it starts to help, so the more you can do to help, the better. But yeah, general, but yeah, advocate for you. What can I do to help my wife heal from my betrayal? This I get all the time, and it's usually from somebody who's very early in the process and wants everything to get better fast. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the first thing is to recognize that this is going to be a process for your betrayed partner, and they're not going to get better overnight. And I'm just going to kind of do just a thought here prior to answering your question, and that is, I think you need to have an attitude that they're not going to heal in 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months. It is a process. And in that process, there's several things you can do. The first one is to you be aware of what resources are out there and help guide or direct your betrayed partner to some good resources. Seeking Integrity is one of the best resources out there with so many different webinars, and you can go to YouTube and find all their videos on there on so many aspects for the betrayed partner and their healing. So I think the right kind of resources also would include finding a good CSAT therapist or somebody who really understands partner betrayal. You want a really good therapist, and encourage your betrayed partner to see a therapist. And I know there are some situations where at first they won't, they're very resistant, but encourage them, let them know you want them to heal. I think verbalizing that you will do whatever it takes, that you have, number one, willingness to do whatever it takes. So that means you're going to your therapist regularly. You have a recovery plan you're willing to share. You've got a group that is helping you support, whether it's 12-step or it's a recovery group. And I believe in having both, that you are doing everything and she's seeing you consistently do this kind of work. That is one of the best things you can do to help her heal. And being transparent and being open and honest. I also think you need to learn empathy. And with empathy, you've got to learn how to sit and listen to their pain and what their triggers are and what they're experiencing, and to be there to help them regulate when they have a trigger and know what to say. And so again, that's work to do with your therapist. I do believe that when you get into couples work, that's really important, and to get into couples work sooner than later. Especially once you've got formal therapeutic disclosure, I think you offer and provide that. And so there's just this willingness to do what she needs for healing, while at the same time working consistently on your own recovery. And again, validating her emotions, her feelings, validating her pain, reassuring her that you are doing your work. So use the AVR formula that Carol Sheets has for empathy. I think that's just really, really important that you become as safe as possible for your partner to be in relationship with while you're during recovery, and being fully accountable for what you've done and never turning the tables on her, being willing to do check-ins. As you can see, the list can go on and on and on and on.
So, in conjunction with what Debbie shared, out of the doghouse for men who've been caught cheating, work group starts in early October. I put the link for that. The betrayed partner work group starts next week. That would be great for her, but I'm absolutely like, do your work. The more you are doing to make sure that you are not going to return to the acting out behavior, that starts to build trust. My colleague Scott and I did a webinar earlier this year on what real recovery is. We talked about, recovery is 2 to 5 years. So there's no, quick fix on all of this type of thing. The more work you are doing to show up and take accountability, you're doing actions that show that your actions are different than what they were. But for her to get support, that trade partner work group, if she hasn't already done that one, that is really solid. And then the boundaries work group that I shared earlier with Debbie is fantastic too. But to have the language of what she's up against, so to speak, and to have support and resources is really key. We do drop-in groups. I'm subbing on multiple drop-in groups again this week. Those are all free for partners. So a lot of it is do the work, show up, take responsibility for, your behaviors, and things start to shift. But it's a process. And there's no, like, you didn't get to this point overnight. Like, there was discovery. So, it feels like it, but all of this has been going on, the undercurrent. So it's going to be, this is a lifelong journey. And I always say, the more you front load the healing process, the better, because you're going to get that foundation, a really solid foundation built. So, oh, this is a good one. In your experience, what do you think is the biggest challenge betrayed partners face on the road to healing?
Okay. So as I read this question, I've got two thoughts on it. The
Okay.
first one is, like I say to my betrayed partners, the thing that is going to prevent you from becoming emotionally regulated is where you let your thoughts go. The stories you go into that are supported by your negative beliefs you have about yourself as a result of your betrayal. So it's going to be, I'm not good enough, I'm not safe, I can't trust. Whatever that is, it is fueling negative thoughts. We're in our stories. And our brain wants us to go into our stories when it feels like it's threatened. And it's really being intentional and aware of what those stories are and stopping those stories and reframing those stories again and again and again and again. I remember when I first saw my very first therapist after betrayal, the first thing she had me do was thought stopping. And I thought that was the dumbest thing in the world. But come to find out, it was hard. I was talking to myself all the time, saying out loud, stop it, I'm not going to go there. Not completely true, right? And then I would reframe it and I'd distract in a healthy way. And it's become one of the tools I use all the time, because what that does is I'm taking and I'm choosing not to go down in my stories and down the rabbit hole. Then I've got to climb back out, and then I'm back down the rabbit hole with the stories and back out, and it's exhausting. That's one of the greatest challenges. The other greatest challenge I see is betrayed partners shifting the focus of their recovery and their healing from focusing on their betraying partner, and I'm only going to be okay if they do their healing, and instead they bring it here to themselves. And they now have the skills and the tools and everything they need that they know, regardless of whatever happens in the relationship, whether it works out or it doesn't, I'm going to be okay. So as I'm working with partners and in groups with partners, when I hear them say that, I'm going, yes, you are now in this space where you've stepped back into your own state of like personal empowerment is what it really is. And so it's a big challenge. It's a process. It doesn't happen at first, right? I've got to let time go on. I've got to be working on my healing. But when you get there, you're going to be okay regardless of the outcome. That is a hard place to get to. And it's just, I love to see when partners get there.
That one was the one I was thinking of. It was even if it's the when when I know everything, or when he's really in recovery, then I'm going to be okay. So but the focus is all externalized to, I can't do any healing until then. Or I'm not the problem. This was my other one, was I'm not the problem. So I don't have to do any, I shouldn't have to go see a therapist. I shouldn't have to get support, and so they're going, if he gets help, then we're all going to be okay. Like, then I'm going to be okay. So that was my other one too. But yeah, yeah, very, very similar. It's like, it's, yeah. So this is a journey that,
Mhm.
for partners, getting support. Yeah, but, I often say, you were in the car accident, you weren't driving, you didn't cause nothing, you did, but guess what? You were still injured, and so getting support and healing is really important for you. So the more you lean into, again, front loading that, that foundation is really key to this. But I hear often, I got another email from somebody I talked to 2 years ago, and they were like, just wanted to let you know where we're at, and like, they're progressing, and it's good. You can, so please lean in. Again, all of the things that were in the chat, please check those out. TAMI@seekingintegrity.com. If you've got questions, happy to help. So thank you as always. I've got my big old notepad full of notes again, so I am grateful. It's always great information that helps people on this journey. So thank you, Debbie.
You're
Bye,
welcome.
everyone.
Bye.